Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Operation Freedom platform. It is my honor to have with me someone I consider a very dear friend and someone who, for well over a decade, has spoken about our financial system, our economic system, and how each and every person can insure themselves and their futures from an economic and financial standpoint by what, if you will, the powers of be have done behind the curtain with what's happened with the dollar, with our currencies, with our economic system. It's my honor to have back with us Adriana Reed. Now, a little background on those of you not familiar with Adriana. She has been a trader with a great company called the Camino Company, C-A-M-I-N-O, CaminoCompany.com, since 2011. And Adriana has distinguished herself as being one of the foremost experts in the precious metals arena and someone who I believe is one, if not the most honest person in the precious metals arena. The Camino Company, with Adriana and her family and the entire crew at Camino, has developed a way for you to have your own financial lifeboat, to protect yourself about the ever-depreciating dollar, the ever-manipulated stock market, the ever-degrading, if you will, economy, although the bought-off lamestream fake media will not tell you that. Adriana will, because she tells you what you need to know. And it's what the bought-off lamestream fake media does not want you to hear or know about. It's my honor to welcome back Adriana Reed. Adriana, welcome back to the Operation Freedom platform.
Thanks for having me again, Dave.
So, Adriana, one of the topics that we have discussed over the past decade has been the ever-depreciating dollar. In 1913, on Jekyll Island, great book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, the power of creating paper currency was handed over from the Treasury Department to what's called the Federal Reserve. Now, Adriana, by way of foundation, because many people still do not know this fact, and you have been pushing this fact for years, much to the chagrin of the deep state. The Federal Reserve, many people believe, well, it's a branch of the federal government. It really isn't, is it?
No, it's not at all. So in 1913, under Wilson, we basically created the Federal Reserve, which is a private banking entity, is really what it is, who controls our currency. And the Treasury just handed over our capability of controlling our currency or having it backed by anything. And the Federal Reserve has shown to be quite out of hand, to say the least.
And in fact, if you look at what the dollar used to buy in 1913 when they took control of the dollar and what it can buy today, I think it's depreciated close to 98, 99%.
Oh, significantly. Absolutely.
So one of my majors in college was economics, chemistry and economics. And one of the concepts we learned early in our economics training was supply versus demand. Okay. Well, we just went through a bit of a goat rodeo yet again in Washington with the creation of a stimulus package, in quotes,
right,
of $1.9 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars. Now, Adriana, the creation of $1.9 trillion out of thin air to be handed out, what does that do to the value of the dollar?
It's obviously going to depreciate it significantly. One of the things that I tell people is that I think we as a people and a population are highly skewed by million, billion, trillion because of inflation, because of the printing of dollars and how much it costs for us to buy things at that. So when we really talk about $1.9 trillion going into the markets, it's such a significant amount of money that you're also adding on top of what we did in 2020. And it's all due to the lack of also us opening up and letting people go back to work, that we do have to send a help out to people in essence, because they're being withheld, which is the irony to me. But it's in my personal belief, it's a very poor decision to continue printing money like this without thinking that there will be any repercussions on the flip side.
Well, it's interesting. 1.9 trillion. So if we have 330 million people in our country, that would mean that every person in our country should, if all that money was going to the people to help the people, because that's the marketing, right? Each of those 330 million people, all of us, would get $6,000. Now, it's been determined that there's a means testing, so 100 million people will get the money. So out of 1.9 trillion dollars, if it was actually going to 100 million people, that means those people who got checks would get $19,000, 18,000,
That's what
right?
it should look like.
But they're not.
Yeah.
They're getting 1,400, which
Right.
means that there's essentially over 90% of this is not going to the people as it's marketed. It's going into pork. It's going, if you will, into programs that we're not sure where it's going.
Exactly.
Which is, again, a debasement of the currency that you've spoken about and frankly been screaming from the mountaintop about for a decade.
Absolutely. The printing of money is probably the worst demise to the American people. I just don't think that we take it on like we should. Printing of money, in essence, it makes things cost more. I mean, inflation is projected by Jerome Powell to be stable and not a problem. In his press conference 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, that he said inflation is its normal routes. And I 100% beg to differ. Is that I think that in the rate we're going, we're going to send ourselves into hyperinflation in 2022 if we don't stop. And what that looks like, if we thought that, we had a depression in the 30s, wait till you see what happens when you send a currency into hyperinflation.
Well, and Michael Berry, who the movie The Big Short was made about. This is the guy who saw the real estate bubble in 2006, 2007, knew something very bad was coming and was trying to warn people. Mm-hmm. Well, he's out with another warning. And it blends into exactly what you said. Michael Berry warns Weimar, from Germany, 1930s, Weimar hyperinflation is coming. He tweeted the following. People say I didn't warn last time. I did, but no one listened. So I'm warning this time. And still, no one listens. But at least I will have proof that I warned what is coming. And what is coming is hyperinflation. Now, let's talk about hyperinflation because, my mom, the history teacher, used to say, history may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So, back in the 30s in Germany, hyperinflation hit, and educate our listeners on what transpired for the average person when that hit.
Exactly. So hyperinflation basically just makes everything grossly more expensive. And it means that your dollar, how far your dollar once was able to take you, it won't be anywhere near that. So you have to put more to the cost of what you're spending on. And what it does is it basically makes it impossible for people to live at that point because of the cost of your daily things that you may buy at that. I mean, we're talking about a loaf of bread, milk, water, whatever it may be. And that's what hyperinflation does. And in essence, in my personal opinion, the people who are affected the most by hyperinflation are typically not the 1% because they kind of fall in their own elite category, as you and I both know. And that's why they don't care about hyperinflation. But it affects the middle class and then also those below it. Because you have the average person going to work, doing their job, their regular 9 to 5, maybe living a normal life. But when hyperinflation kicks in, that 9 to 5 becomes less significant than it was before. And then you take it, ends up wiping out the middle class and putting them at a lower scale of an impoverished line. And that's what you saw in Germany. It did the same thing. And I pray that it doesn't happen here, but if we don't stop, we have no choice.
And back in the 1970s, I'm old, so I remember this. We had a stagflation scenario where the economy stagnated, but prices were rising significantly. So
Exactly.
some of the latest data, which really is looking into the stagflation morphing into hyperinflation down the line based on all this funny money printing, U.S. retail sales collapse in February. Online sales also plunge. U.S. industrial production unexpectedly also plunges in February. Add to that, Biden plans on, we mentioned about the stimulus package, and got to pay for it some way, right? Biden plans biggest federal tax hike since 1993. His administration is penciling in between $2 trillion and $4 trillion of tax increases. We look at the jobs, right? This happened. 75% of all jobs added in February were with waiters and bartenders. Construction jobs down.
Yeah.
So when I look back at stagflation, what ended up doing very well in that time period were precious metals. Because this is one of the big problems, Adriana. Many people listen to the videos we do and then go to their stockbrokers or bond brokers and they say, okay, I heard this video and I want to diversify a bit and I want to create an insurance policy with precious metals just because of this inflation scenario, stagflation scenario, hyperinflation scenario. I want to be able to at least have some sound money, and I want to look into precious metals. And invariably that broker says, oh, don't do that.
Right.
Why does the broker say that?
My personal opinion on brokers is the general sense is that they have to keep the money on the books in order to make their cut in their business. And brokers have a tendency to also only speak about what it is that they know. Now, they know ETFs, they know mining contracts, they know safe haven investments. They can use the terminology all day long, but the fact of the matter is there's such a huge discrepancy between what an ETF is and what a physical precious metal is as far as taking it on during these times. ETFs in the general sense, I don't think that they are particularly safe because they do still run that keyboard mentality, in my personal opinion. We've seen since 2008 and also in previous recessions, I should say, that we've seen how easily it is to wipe things out with a touch of a key. And if physical precious metals, they take money off of the books. They give you the power to have that freedom of it's your money, you hold it, and it's yours. The bank has no possession of it. Your broker will no longer have possession of it. And so it brings a lot of fear, I think, to the brokers. And that's why they have a tendency to give the runaround to all of their clients at that.
So let's take people through the steps, because one of the problems is when folks say, okay, I've decided that I'm not going to take my broker's advice and I am going to take some insurance money and I am going to purchase precious metals. Now, the way Camino Company handles it is very transparent, very upfront. Many people say, well, I have a friend who's involved or has a friend that's involved in selling precious metals. I'm going to go through them. Okay, fine. But then invariably, I will hear from some of those people and say, my brother-in-law had this friend who had this business and involved in precious metals, and I went through them and I got ripped off. And I wish I would have gone through Camino. But one of the before people actually sign a check over or a credit card, a contract to get a purchase product, I want you to take people through the steps, and we're going to go through gold and silver. And where we are with the supply on both of those right now. Absolutely. And take them through the steps. So when they hear how Camino does it, if they're hearing something different, it'll set off some red flags.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with someone who calls up and says, okay, I'd like to take some of my insurance money and the financial, and I'm going to purchase some gold and silver. Now, someone says, I've never done this before, Adriana. So what do I do? How much do I do gold and how much do I do silver? What do you tell folks?
Right. So my personal opinion, it has to do with how much spending power each customer has. Everyone's different. I mean, I deal with people who have $100 and upward. So it will be based off of how much you have to spend. On a typical basis, I would like that we have 50-50 gold and silver. Some people, because of the current climate of silver, is that they're going actually heavier on the silver because there is some question of its potential to take off here in a little bit. But I do think a 50-50 range is always good to have. Now, the reason I say this is because I think that gold has tons of potential to be good for investment purposes, but also I think in the long-term holding, as we continue to devalue our dollar, it will be beneficial for you to have gold. But on the flip side, I do encourage people to have silver on hand because I do think that we're at a point that there's potential for us to default our currency at some point in the unfortunate near future. And I think that you should have something that you'd be able to use just in case the transition into a new currency is not smooth. You need to be prepared for what that may look like, unfortunately. And silver could act as that safety net for you.
Well, and that was actually most recently the case in Venezuela.
Yes.
That folks that had silver were able to procure foodstuffs.
Exactly.
People would gladly accept silver, and it was used on the markets to keep people alive.
Absolutely. And the one thing I also always mention to people when you talk about Venezuela is that it was a very rich country before its downfall. It was prosperous. It had a lot of natural tradable goods to give, and their downward spiral came quick, in my opinion. And I think that we take it too lightly sometimes when we see other countries fall. One of the things that I tell people also is the United States is a very young country, historically speaking, as well. And lots of countries have gone through default. You and I talk about thousands and thousands of years. Look at under Caesar. It is natural for countries to, unfortunately, put themselves in these positions due to power struggle. So
if someone decides to purchase physical precious metals, gold, we'll start with gold, then we'll go to silver. What are their options?
Yes. So right now, the main options, and we're still offering it, but I am on more the basis of skewing people away from it, is the Gold Eagle is still offered. I prefer you not to buy it because right now it's selling at 11% over the current spot price because the U.S. Mint has decided to transition into a new image. So they're not going to be able to keep up with demand as far as I'm concerned if they're going to shut down for the time being. The other options that I would put people more towards are going to be the Canadian maple leaf, which is a great option, the Australian kangaroo, and then the 1 ounce gold bar. All of these are great ways to get your money out of fiat currency and into precious metals with good holding, but also you have a high liquidity on the other side. So these are all well-traded gold pieces that are recognizable throughout the world.
I want to talk about the mint for a second. That's very interesting. So you said the mint is changing its the product, and they're having to change their tool and die settings. So they're shutting down production in gold. Is that also true in silver?
Yes, it does fall to silver as well.
And how long are they going to be shut down in the United States?
Well, it's questionable as far as how long this is going to take, but they are saying that potential will be June to July for the new material to be released.
So here's my question. One of the things I have heard is that there's a supply problem with gold and in particular silver. Now, Adriana, is it also possible that they're saying it's related to this tooling, and which I'm sure there's a component of that, but could it also be because they can't get their hands on the raw materials because of the supply problems, and they're doing this switch over now just because, well, they can cover up a little bit of that supply problem? Because if it becomes knowledgeable, there's a huge supply problem, and the mint can't even get stuff. Look out. Yeah. I mean, Katie barred the door as far as prices.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that it definitely has probably something to do with that. I mean, the decision, I would have halted the choice to do this if I was actually in management. It's not a logical choice. And so I do think that there are underlying factors in order why they chose to do things the way that they did. I think supply is absolutely one of them. And I think that we are coming to kind of more of that point where the supply is not meeting the demand whatsoever.
So let's now talk about silver. So we have the similar situation with the U.S. Mint. So the options for purchasing silver physically are, what are the people have options for?
So silver, it runs, there's private and then there's government issued material. So the private material is going to be the 1 ounce generic rounds, which you can check out our website. We keep an image of a buffalo there so you can see what it would look like. Then there's also going to be 10 ounce bars and 100 ounce bars. And then there's also going to be the government issued material. So you're talking about silver Canadian maple leafs and silver eagles. Now, in general, the premiums of silver have gone up drastically. I would say they really started rising more significantly when the Reddit users started to go after silver around that time after they went from GameStop to silver. We saw an increase in premiums, but that premium stuck. And I think it's because an awareness to silver was brought up, in my personal opinion. So I think more people have started going towards it. And then the reason I would say go for the privately issued material is that the premiums are almost 50% lower than they are for the government issued. Silver Eagles are selling for $9 over spot right now versus you can get private for $4. And you and I are of the same belief in the general sense. At the end of the day, it's the silver that's going to be the impact, not the image that's on the silver, and its usability. So there's those items. The last one that I always recommend, and you know how I feel about the 90% junk silver, at times it can be difficult to process what it is and what it's worth, but it offers that fractional silver. Like I said, if you did have to use it, it could be a great source for you to be able to have that spending capability. But it also, on the flip side, it has that capability to transition you into a new currency at a higher value if you have it. And on top of that, it's a great investment, in my personal opinion.
So when you say junk silver, people are thinking, yes, oh, it's a twisted fork and a bent spoon. And educate our listeners, because this is really important, because people, as you say, it's the best value in silver, yet people are hesitant about buying it because it said, well, wait a minute, this is junk. She said junk silver. Educate our listeners about why it's really not junk, but why it's called junk.
Right. So it's a misnomer, but junk is pre-1964, 64 and before, our halves, quarters, and dimes were made with silver in them. They were made with 90% silver. Now, the best way to explain it is if I took a big pot and melted everything together, 90% of that mixture would be made with silver content. And then when it's poured into the dies, that $1 face value, whether it's 10 dimes, 4 quarters, or 2 half dollars, contains 0.715 parts of an ounce of silver, no matter how I line it up. And so that's where its true value is in the silver. But it's called junk because all of this is basically, if you took a bag of quarters from the bank right now, but before 1964, it was made with silver. Now it's made with absolutely nothing in it, but it's been used, and so it has some. I guess it's dirty is the way to put it. So that's why we call it junk.
So let's talk about availability. Where are we now with availability of the 10 and 100 ounce bars, the junk silver, the rounds, the one ounce generic non-government rounds, and then the U.S. silver dollar and the Canadian maple leaf, 1 ounce?
So for us, everything is running a 2 to 8 week delay on delivery. Number one, we're experiencing an exponentially high amount of orders. So we're working on overdrive to get orders out to people as quickly as they can, but there are a lot of orders to be filled. Number one. Number two is that the production of silver items specifically is even the private and the public sectors, they can't keep up with production whatsoever. So you are experiencing a 3 to 8 week delay on delivery of items, depending on what it is that you order. Now, my personal opinion, because I personally think, and after reading a lot of comments, is after the 100 days of the current administration doing what it is that they do, if I had to put an order in today on silver and wait a little bit, I would, because 8 weeks down the road, we could be in a very different scenario than we are today. Unfortunately, I think there's more capabilities under the new administration for collapse than there were before.
Now, when folks look at the current situation in supply, and when you look back at 2007 and 2008, so 2007, 2008, there was a real supply crunch. And many people said, well, this is a once in a lifetime, once in a career event. It's never going to become tighter than it is in 2007 and 2008. Compare today to 2007, 2008. Is it not as bad, or worse from a supply standpoint?
10 times worse, hands down.
10 times worse today.
Yes, for supply, absolutely. The problem is we hit such an odd crossroad dealing with shutdowns and dealing with supplying that it put people behind. But on top of that, also demand is out the roof, because 2008 is very fresh to people. That crisis made a significant impact on people's lives for the rest of their lives. Look at the number of people, as you and I have talked about, who are over 60 who had to go back to work because their 401ks were wiped out. Their IRAs were wiped out. They were put in circumstances, families were put in circumstances they never thought that would ever happen to them in their lifetime. So with that being as fresh as it is, a lot of people are rushing to precious metals because of now they also have knowledge of how they can keep themselves safe and not have to go through that again.
So when someone, now let's take people through the process for gold and silver, because it's similar at Camino. So if they go somewhere else, they know if things aren't being handled in a transparent manner, they can, if you will, hold their hand up and say, whoa, I'm going to stop on this
Absolutely.
trade. So educate. So somebody calls, I want to buy gold, I want to buy silver. Then take people through the steps of what happens then in a transparent process that Camino advocates.
It's very simple. So you're going to call up, you'll speak to one of the traders. We're all family, so work on commission. And you can talk to any of the traders. What they'll do is they'll basically walk through the process with you. How much spending power do you have? What it is that you would like? We really like to get to know our customers and what it is that they want. And we've been that way forever. We can always put our recommendations based off of our knowledge of what we have. We're happy to share with you. But also at the end of the day, we always are adamant about it being you being the one who pulls the trigger. We'll go over all of the pricing, quote you everything. We'll get your shipping information and your name, and then we're going to give you a contract number. So this will lock all of the prices in. At that point in time, everything stands still, even with the ever-changing markets. Now, this is a guarantee that we will deliver the items that you were quoted at that price, but you're going to pay that price. So it works both ways. If the markets go up, I'm not going to charge you more. If the markets go down, you've acknowledged that you will still pay for the material that was purchased. At that point, you then would send payment to us. At this point, we are requesting wires because there's been a little bit of difficulty with the mailing getting here in a reasonable amount of time with checks. So we are requesting wires.
So to do that, you would go to your bank?
So we would email you the wire instructions with our banking information.
Okay.
We made it very simple. We put it in a PDF. So all you have to do is just print out that piece of paper, or you can pull it up on your iPhone or whatever it is easiest for you. Hand it over to the banker and tell them the amount. And we do understand that a lot of banks have increased their wire fees. So we now have switched over to free shipping to also accommodate to help with the wire fee on our side. Now,
you mentioned that Camino does not, your commission, you don't work on commission.
No, we do not.
Okay. Why is that important?
Especially in our industry, I have found that individuals that work on commission have a tendency to sell things that are not necessary. And these are items that will have leave a bad taste in your mouth is probably the best way to put it. Not working on commission, we're driven by actually taking care of people and making sure that we're doing what's best by you. And I just think that commission, it can steer people in the wrong direction in precious metals.
So by not being commissioned, essentially you assure people they get the most number of ounces of metal, either silver or gold, for the amount of money they're going to spend.
Absolutely, yes.
There's no, I have a special coin just for you that, silver might be selling for $30 an ounce, but, because it's the buffalo is standing on its head versus on its feet, and there's not that many of them, it sells for $90 an ounce. So that's the one that's what you're trying to avoid.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you as you know, Bert has put it into our minds a million times, as well as I try every time, is you always want to pay for the silver. You want the lowest premiums, you want to acquire the most ounces, and then you want to go from there.
So then somebody placed the order. Mm-hmm. They do the wire.
Yes.
Then what happens?
Then you're going to get in line to ship. We're getting material into this location as quickly as possible. We don't keep everything here. At that point, though, when your order does ship, you'll receive a call from Miss Pam or myself, and we'll give you the tracking number so that you can follow your package's journey, so that you know where it is at all times. We have tried multiple different ways to ship things out between FedEx, UPS. We use USPS registered insured, because we have found, actually, unfortunately, it's been the most consistent with not leaving packages at people's doorstep. We package everything as tightly as we possibly can so that there's no indicators inside the box that would shake around and make that metal noise to flag people, especially now with people falling on hard times and making poor decisions. We try to pack things as well as possible. At that point, we hope, though, that you have to sign for the package. When you take possession, and I think now more than ever is probably a critical point, is how to store precious metals. It's a conversation I have a lot. There's two ways, in my opinion. If you can get a nice fireproof safe into your home or somewhere in your apartment, wherever you may be, to store it, I think that's a great option. If you're uncomfortable having the value in your home, you utilize Brinks. Mm-hmm. And we can also talk about private safety deposits, boxes. There's a lot of depositories that are private that are opening up, in my opinion, to help people get out of the banking system. The one place to not put your precious metals is back into the system in which we're trying to get you out of. So do not go back to the bank with your precious metals and put it in that box.
Well, wait, no. They call my bank calls it a safety deposit box. So why wouldn't I put my precious metals in the safety deposit box at the bank?
Yeah. So you and I have talked about this. My main perspective is you have a key, mm-hmm. and they have a key. Mm-hmm. So who actually owns the safety deposit box?
Not me.
It sounds 50-50. Hmm. And as we all know, when you're playing against the house always wins. Right. So it's not worth it.
Which is why I'm a big fan of such entities as Brinks, a private mm-hmm. deposit or private. And you have a list, I do believe, of private depositories in certain parts of the country that you have done business with that you trust.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes there's local ones that are popping up in a smaller, if you may live in a smaller area, you can always look into your local area as well. Go visit it, do the research to see where you would store it, make sure that they're insured and you'd be covered to have your precious metals there. One
thing, when you mentioned that you ship the product, either gold, silver, yes. to the customer, many people are like, well, wait, no, it comes in a box and it says, oh, this is coming, here's your gold and silver, it says on the package. I don't want people to know that I got that. You take steps so that educate listeners on what
Absolutely.
Camino
Yeah.
does.
So we do multiple things now. We've added a couple things to the outside of the box also to try to keep things safer. We only list Camino Company, so that way it's not an indicator Camino Coin Company by technicality. The minute you put coin on there, I think it's a red flag. And also on top of that is Kyle has started adding listings on the outside that say, do not leave this package unattended. Please require signature. We actually market ourselves now in the hopes that the drivers will be more efficient with their deliveries at that.
Now, let's say someone has purchased physical precious metals and they have an expense develop. And they don't want to part with their precious metals. They'd rather part with other things because the paper assets don't hold value such as physical assets do. But let's say they have to sell their metals.
Yes.
How do you handle that then? Somebody says, I got a wedding and I got to handle the wedding. So I got to do some sale here because, they want a bigger cake than I want to buy, but I got to get the bigger cake for the. Okay, so what happens?
So you would just give us a call and it'll be the same process, only in reverse. So we'll go over all the numbers, what we would pay for each item. You would give us a breakdown of what it is that you're selling. You ship the metals back to us. We'll check the metals to make sure it is what we talked about. And then we'll send payment out to you.
It's that simple.
It's a very simple process indeed. Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to precious metals?
I think you and I have been saying this probably since 2014 is the best time to buy is now. Because I think that the catastrophic events that happen economically seem like they're all of a sudden. But they're not. They're very calculated in their manner, in my opinion. And my hope is that people will get in before these catastrophic events ruin their lives. And I think precious metals can stop you from having an extreme downfall, economically speaking.
Now, Adriana, the big companies that make products that have a silver component to them, which is most tech companies, automotive companies.
Yeah.
They buy silver in 1,000-ounce bar quantities.
They do.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, for years, even like in 2007, 2008, it was my understanding that there was never really a shortage of those 1,000-ounce bars. I've heard through other sources that at this point, silver is so hard, it's being so hard to get, and as you mentioned earlier in this interview, that even 1,000-ounce bars are difficult to get, which is kind of never quite been the case before. Is that an accurate assessment I'm getting from other sources?
I would say so, absolutely. I think that silver is, in the general sense, especially the 1,000-ounce bars, because people don't realize the 1,000-ounce bars are what converted into hundreds, tens, and ones. And everything starts out in 1,000-ounce COMEX bars is how they start out. Now, the delay in manufacturing, there's only one real cause would be that you can't get the silver needed to make the product. So I do think that absolutely, I would put that as a true statement that it is definitely becoming more difficult. I think one of the things that is difficult for me to wrap my head around is that if it is that difficult to get 1,000-ounce bars due to demand, why is the price not reflecting that?
And that's where we get into the manipulation issues by paper manipulating physical, but it appears that those days are waning.
Absolutely. I think there's also a new awareness to ETFs and paper contracts and how they are manipulating physical precious metals. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, I recently had Ed Steer, who's a financial analyst, focuses on precious metals on the radio show. Here's something he said, I'd like your take. Although the banks have been the cork in the bottle holding precious metals prices down for decades, which you've discussed, It would appear, in my opinion, that they are preparing to exit stage left, and those selected few will be saved by the Exchange Stabilization Fund. And if there's not enough money there, the Fed Treasury can just print more to bail them out. The remaining short holders will burn in a short covering rally for the ages. I've mentioned the fact that there have always been the possibility that powers that be could close COMEX, which is where physical precious metals are traded, and allow precious metals to trade for a period of time without a futures or options market attached to them, and that scenario is still on the table. But it is an either-or situation at this point, because no matter which door is chosen, it's a given that precious metals prices in particular, and all commodity prices in general, have 50 years of price catch-up to make up for since Nixon put an end temporarily to the convertibility of the U.S. dollar for gold in August of 1971.
I mean, honestly, I couldn't agree more, Dave. As you know, my perspective, I am a libertarian, and I think the biggest problem we have is we do need to end the Fed because they've taken us off of a silver standard. They've taken us off of a gold standard. And the markets are constantly manipulated in order to make sure that because of the opposition that we work as gold and silver physicals is in opposition of the dollar. Now, everybody wants to keep the dollar as king, but at the rate that we're going and devaluing the way we are, that can't always be the case. And at some point, we have to hit that crossroad and know what that means. And that's what he's explaining, is that the catch-up that is required for this is exponential. And at some point, I mean, the light will always reveal what the dark shows. And at what point are we going to stop doing this to ourselves? And will the markets show their true self at that? I mean, I've always projected, just in a more, I guess, calm time, that silver should be at $50 an ounce right now and nothing less. And I believe that a lot too of its counterpart, that gold should still be higher. But I think this is all driven by the perception that the dollar needs in order for it to remain king. That's why precious metals are manipulated.
Final point. Many people, when they contact me, they say, my investment insurance portfolio for my future is tied up in an IRA. And I've spoken to some financial representatives, and they tell me that an IRA, you cannot hold physical precious metals in an IRA. Now, is that true?
No. No, that is not true. It is beyond false. Some companies do not allow the purchase of precious metals and physicals, but that is not every company. You can transfer your IRA or your 401k to a different holding company that will allow you to buy physical precious metals. Now, I can walk you through the process. I particularly like to move slowly with the IRAs because of the penalties and fees that are always associated with them. But we can absolutely make sure that you get physical precious metals in your IRA. I think it's one of the most important places to have precious metals, being that it is typically, the IRAs are more of a long-term sitting investment. And precious metals obviously have valued themselves much higher than they have in the past, and they do grow in value over years. So it's good to have, but also it makes it for that same scenario that I talked about earlier about 2008 and not having your IRA wiped out because of physical precious metals being where your money is. So give me a call and I will absolutely help you out and walk you through the process.
So let's talk about how folks can get in touch with you. First, website and phone and email. Yes.
So you can visit us at www.caminocompany.com, or you can also give me a call at 800-348-8001. And then you can also give me a direct email at adriana@caminocompany.com. There's also a contact through our website if you forget my email or something of the sort, that you just click the contact us and it will link you to an email that you can send to our website.
Adriana, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do, and everybody at the Camino Company. Bert started the company well over 30 years ago to provide a lifeboat, an insurance policy for folks that were concerned about what was happening with the dollar. And you and Pam and everybody, Kyle, everybody at Camino is carrying on that legacy. And I thank you, because the deep state is not fond of people having control over their own financial future. And that is what you at Camino Company provide, folks. And I thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do in that regard.
Thank you, Dave.
CaminoCompany.com, 800-348-8001. And your email address again, Adriana?
Is Adriana with one N at CaminoCompany.com.
Thank you very much for your time, Adriana. And folks, thank you for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.